Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. Mandata, the king of the entire world, consisting of 7 islands, was struck with wonder when he saw the household opulence of Shobhari Muni. Thus he gave up his false prestige in his position as emperor of the world. Purport. Everyone is proud of his own position, but here an astounding experience in which the emperor of the entire world felt himself defeated in all details of material happiness by the opulence of Shobhari Muni. So let us all join hands and pray to the Lord and His devotees and yourselves for some blessings, that something productive can come for this class for myself and perhaps if a bonus for someone else. Om Jnanatimidandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Ummilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Brindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sutta Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhasya Kripa Sindhobhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivasadi Gaura Bhakta Brinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So today, I started preparing this on Sunday, and firstly I'd like to take this opportunity to express my gratitude in being in the presence amongst great Vaishnavas and Vaishnavis, Mother Kalangana. It's making me feel embarrassed sitting here, and many other senior devotees, but I'll try to say something. I have a bold nature anyway, so I might as well engage it. So when I was reading this, it's a short purport. A key feature that coming out of this is obviously about this word stambham, which is translated by Prabhupada here as pride due to a prestigious position. So I wanted to think about opulence, and we all have different types of opulences. And we'll be discussing the different types of opulences, not so much in the 6 opulences of the Supreme Lord, but more so the difference between internal opulences and external opulences. So maybe I could just throw it out there, just to align us. What opulences are we all looking for in our day-to-day lives, be it material when working outside or trying to just establish ourselves in this world and spiritually? Can we see what opulences people are actually looking for? Wealth, prestige, fame, position, electronic devices, Kali Yuga, yeah. Sorry? Power, yes. So there's these 6 opulences, and they're described a lot in the teachings of Lord Chaitanya, in one of the chapters called Krishna's Opulences. So like that, there's 6, but it's interesting, whenever we've asked this question, people always say wealth, power, strength, beauty first. Knowledge and renunciation always come at the end or forgotten. 5 out of 6 are usually remembered, and 1 is always forgotten, and it's usually knowledge or renunciation. People aren't really looking for that. And our choices show us which opulences are really important for us. For example, myself, I trade as a dentist, and often people come in and they don't come in for an opulence of so much, renunciation or strength or anything. They're coming in mainly for beauty, can I have that smile makeover? Can you make me look 10 years younger? Some of you may have seen the TV program. So, and often I see in their eyes, it's quite shallow. You know, they're about, this one lady's just spent, I hope she's not watching, she just spent £5,000 to have a smile makeover done. And yet she still wears Reebok trainers, Lacoste trousers, and £2 shirts from, Soccer World or somewhere cheap, or Primark. And it's very interesting how they think that by changing one small aspect of their life, everything else will change. And we'll look into how we're always trying to get a better situation, but is it really going to satisfy us? So there's this famous story of Purna Mushka Bhav. Prabhupada says it, and I read it in one of his purports. So Purna Mushka Bhav means become a mouse again. It's very hilarious. My spiritual master, His Holiness Kadammakana Swami, says it in a very animated way, but I'll spare us the embarrassment of me trying to do it that way. So firstly, there was a mouse, and he was in the in wildness, and he sees a cat and he gets scared. He thinks that the cat's going to, kind of compromise his situation. So then he sees a saintly person and he asks the saintly person, these are in the Vedic days where everyone used to speak. So the mouse asked the saintly person, can I become a cat so that I'm safe, because then the cats won't want to eat me. So the saintly person said, tatashtu, so be it. So he became a cat. Then he was a cat. Then a dog came towards him, and he got fearful of his situation, so he wanted to improve his situation. And then he asked the saintly person, can I become a dog? So the saintly person said, tatashtu, so be it. So he became a dog, and likewise then he became a tiger. And then finally the tiger's there, and he comes up to the saintly person, and the saintly person says, so what do you want now? And he says, I want to eat you. And the saintly person says, Purna Mushika Bhav, so become a mouse again. So it's like this. Life is, we're always trying to improve our situation, but at some point, then, the four aspects of life, eating, sleeping, mating, defending. So we want to defend our position. We want to defend our security in this world. And then we may look over the fence to see, is the grass greener on the other side? We may even jump over the fence, only to realize that maybe that side of the fence wasn't much different. So Prabhupada, in a purport to the story of Bali Maharaj, which the devotees here were discussing a few months ago, in 822 verse 16 in the purport, halfway through, he says, material opulence is sometimes dangerous because it diverts one's attention to false prestige by giving one the impression that he is the owner and master of everything he surveys, although actually this is not a fact. So in the Bhagavad Gita we learn this word ahankara. That is due to the false ego that we think that, we become the ahankara vimurtatma kartaham iti manyate, so that we think that we are the owner and the actual person doing the activity, but in actuality it's not us. So I wanted to just touch on the end of the previous verse's purport. J. Krishna Prabhu gave class yesterday. I was watching online whilst driving 100 miles per hour to work. And I somehow caught the point that there was an aspect of the purport which wasn't touched on. And that was here at the end. Those who are not Atma Tattvavit, or who do not know the spiritual value of life, can be satisfied with external material opulences. But those who are Atma Tattvavit are not inspired by material opulence. This is the instruction we can derive from the life and activities of Shobhari Muni. So here Prabhupada is explaining the difference between external and internal opulences and what is the qualification for enjoying the different types. It's based on our consciousness. So what I wanted to look at is to try and describe opulences in relation to the modes of material nature. So for instance, someone with opulence in ignorance is described to be like Hiranyakashipu. This word stambam, I Veda-based it, and it comes up in this pastime in Bhagavatam 7:8-14, where it describes Hiranyakashipu's bodily strength. He was so proud of it that he wanted to influence his power over this helpless 5-year-old boy who was his son, Prahlad Maharaj. And so this is showing one who has opulence but uses it in the mode of ignorance, with complete delusion complete selfishness, and he wants to try and inflict bullying nature on his child. Then someone with opulence in the mode of passion. So there's this, I don't know if anyone's heard this story of Mr. Bilver. Sutapa, is that a famous story? Mr. Bilver? I heard it in a lecture anyway. So basically, this is the story of Mr. Bilver going to the gatekeeper at heaven. So Mr. Bilver was a huge, wealthy industrialist in India. He had his foot in many, many companies and industries. Very wealthy man. And then as time went on, he started doing lots of charity work. He opened up hospitals, philanthropic work. He was giving money away. And so he thought he was doing good for society, giving back to the world, which is kind of a righteous thing to do, people think. But his motivations were wrong. So anyway, life comes to an end, as it does for all of us. And he goes to the gate of heaven thinking, I've done good, I must end up in heaven. So there he is at the gate, and the gatekeeper says, yes, what can I do for you? And he says, well, can I enter the gates of heaven? So the gatekeeper said, but what good have you done? Only good people come to heaven. So Mr. Bilver explains, but I opened this hospital, I opened this hospice, I did this, I gave that money, did you not see the check? I've got pictures. And he said, yeah, but you were doing all of that for your own prestige, your own position. You were hoping that people would look at you and then follow you and take your advice and counsel. So he carried on explaining all the things he was doing. The gatekeeper carried on saying, but this was all for your own benefit, which is a symptom of the mode of passion. And then the gatekeeper said, look, I'm sorry, but I have to move on. Other people are knocking at the door. Unless you can tell me something you've actually did good for the eternal benefit of others, then, we'll consider it. So he said, oh, yes, one thing I have done. So Mr. Bilver, has anyone been to India? And when you come out of the airport, you wait for a taxi, and the ambassador car comes. Hot leather seats, can't sit on it. So he was the one who created the ambassador car, India's unfortunate trademark. So the ambassador car was made in the 40s, I think, and it's never changed since. It's got the same big bumper, big round lights, dirty leather seats. It's never changed. It makes the same horn noise as well. So anyway, so he was like, I made the ambassador. The gatekeeper's laughing with his colleagues at the gate. He's like, what's the ambassador done for the eternal benefit of anyone? He said, it makes them pray. So like that, people in the mode of passion, by hook or crook, they'll try and find a way to get some benefit for something they've done, although it was only for their own motivation. Then if we move to the people with opulence who try to engage it in the mode of goodness, this is the mode of material goodness. This is where the principles are with knowledge, with virtue, righteousness, for other people's benefits. So Radhanath Maharaj, he gives this example of Michael Jordan, the most famous basketball player of all time. So Michael Jordan, it's the final. Many of you have probably heard this. It's not Krishna Leela, but it's still nice to hear. Michael Jordan, it's the final minute or final seconds of the final game of the NBA championship. He's worked so hard the whole season that if he makes this point, if he scores this point himself, he'll win the all-time records of a maximum amount of points scored per season. And all the pre-game press was all about Michael Jordan making that record. Currently, Lionel Messi in football is also going for such records. So similarly, he was going for this record, and everybody was making it out like Michael Jordan needs to do it for himself, to ground himself as the all-time best. So last seconds are coming, and he's got the ball, and everyone's screaming out, shoot, shoot, shoot. But then he sees one of his teammates closer to the net. Basketball is where you throw the ball in the net. And he throws it to his teammate, Steve Kerr. And Steve Kerr scores. Chicago Bulls, I think, is their team. And they win the championship and everything. But Michael Jordan doesn't win. So every single press report was dying to ask him a question. Why did you pass? Why did you not shoot? So he answered with great dignity and virtue. He said, I could have scored it, but I could have missed. And then my team would have lost. But Steve Kerr was left open, and he definitely would have scored from there. So I passed. So you can see he's using the basis of knowledge, and he's using also, he's thinking of other people. He's not thinking of himself. So although it's a mundane example, the principle's still there. He's still using the principles of somewhat sattva. So we can, and also Warren Buffett, this is borderline, but he was 60, he had a wealth, the Forbes magazine said he had a wealth of $62 billion in the early 2000s. I was watching some videos about him yesterday, and actually he lives in the same house he lived in before he made his billions. It's a little, like the drive is only like most of our drives, just for one car. He lives in the same house, and he gave away 85% of his wealth in donation in 2006, and that was $52 billion he gave away. Now, sometimes it hurts us as patrons to give £125 a month, but to give $52 billion away, 85% of your position away for the benefit of others, and he did it in a very humble way. He didn't, like stand there, the newspapers with a big checkboard, as you see in awards. There was none of that. He just gave it away, and people came to know, and obviously 52 billion improves the charity quite a lot. But he did it for the benefit of others, and he wasn't expecting much prestige. But anyway, the verdict's out whether he was looking for some prestige or not on that. And then we move on to the opulence in someone who's transcended the modes of material nature. So Shuddha Sattva. This is where somebody has true humility, where they're not only thinking for the benefit of others, but they're thinking of the benefit of their others' eternal life. So Prabhupada makes this point of no need to help a drowning man. Is that right? Drowning man, because the drowning, but the actual problem is not just the body. So like this, one time I heard this at Vyas Puja in Germany this year of Srila Prabhupada. So Srila Prabhupada, he was in his bedroom in Vrindavan, and one disciple was coming. And for those of us who've been to Prabhupada's house in Vrindavan, there's that window from where you can see inside Prabhupada's bedroom. So this disciple's coming there, and he looks through the window and he sees Prabhupada with like wads of cash everywhere, all over the, be it bed or floor or something. So much money. And Prabhupada was so absorbed in counting this money. And this disciple asked the secretary at the time, can I see Prabhupada? And he said, Prabhupada's busy. Just wait for him and then we'll call you when he's ready. So his disciple's looking through the window and saying, oh my God, Prabhupada's making me wait. And he's counting all his money. So some doubt comes in the mind of the disciple, like, Prabhupada seems really like into the money, huh? It's like, he's really like got a big smile on his face, really counting. So the disciple's thinking, maybe, maybe, Srila Prabhupada, maybe. So then at that time, Srila Prabhupada, obviously being a pure devotee of the Lord, the super soul, can tell him what is going on, and he knows. So then anyway, Prabhupada's intention was he was counting it to then divide it to the Mayapur project. I think it was Tamar Krishna Goswami, but he was giving it to the secretary. This is for Mayapur, this is for Vrindavan, this is for Juhu, this is for X, Y, and Z. And then at the end of giving the money for different projects, there was nothing left in his hands. And he looked through the window and smiled at the disciple and he said, you can come in now. So like that, Srila Prabhupada he had all this opulence, all this money, all this, from the money can come power, fame, prestige. But he was only ever thinking of how to engage in Krishna service. He was fully absorbed in how to engage in Krishna service. And in relation to this example, Yes, here it is. So in the Bhagavad Gita, in the first chapter, verses 32 to 35, this is where Arjuna's describing his 5 reasons why he doesn't want to fight. And one of them reasons is he's saying, like, well, what's the point of killing everyone? And if I gain the kingdom and all the riches, whom will I enjoy it with? So in the purport, Srila Prabhupada states, everyone wants to show his opulence to friends and relatives, but Arjuna fears that all his relatives and friends will be killed on the battlefield, and he will be unable to share his opulence after victory. This is a typical calculation of material life. The transcendental life, however, is different. Since a devotee wants to satisfy the desires of the Lord, he can, Lord willing, accept all kinds of opulence for the service of the Lord. And if the Lord is not willing, he should not accept a farthing. So we can see from the life of our Goswamis and Acharyas that they're so detached from opulence. If it comes, it comes. If it doesn't, it doesn't. We can remember Raghunath Das Goswami being, I think it was his appearance or disappearance day, the Tin Goswami recently, and I was reading in one book how Raghunath Das Goswami was born in such a wealthy, in those days equivalent to a billionaire family, really, really wealthy family. He had all this opulence and he left it, and at the last days of his life. So, no, and then when he was living at Radhakund, there's that pastime of that wealthy man who wanted to do some seva to the Badrik Ashram temple, but then Lord Vishnu told him, I think the deity's name Vishal, told him that actually you go and give the money to Raghunath Das Goswami for him to construct and excavate the Radhakund to make it easier for people to bathe and make it more, apparently, more welcoming. So, wealth was coming his way, opulence, although all he was doing is just sitting at the bank of Radhakund, chanting Hare Krishna, and worshipping the deity that Mahaprabhu had given him. And then in the later pastimes of his life, we can see how he would eat so little, and so no opulence. So here again, this purport that if the Lord desires, then opulence will come. But it depends on the degree to how we engage the opulence in the Lord's service, as shown by that example of Srila Prabhupada. Two other very nice examples, this month being Kartik. So this is a month where we're trying to do a lot of Krishna Smaranam, remember Krishna's beauty and opulences. So these two pastimes are also signifying how people engage their opulence in pure goodness in the service of Krishna. So there's this... So Krishna was in Vrindavan and he was doing his beautiful pastimes, unlimited beautiful pastimes. And there was a lady in Mathura and she was selling fruits. So she would go around with a basket selling lots and lots of mangoes and bananas, and they were really tasty fruits. She became famous. Whenever she'd come out with the basket, all the kids would go running saying, "Yeah, I want one." Kind of like a modern ice cream van. So one day when she was out doing her trade, someone told her, "Oh, do you know Mother Yashoda Mai? She's had a child, this little Gopal. He's so beautiful. If you see him, you can never take your mind off of him. So you should one day go and see him." So like this, the lady got attracted by hearing the glories of Krishna. And this is a repetitive theme in Bhagavatam, how just by hearing, like the Brahmana's wife, just by hearing about Krishna, not even seeing him, they become so attracted and attached to Krishna. Our misfortune is we see him every day, we hear about him every day, we chant his name every day. But to what degree of percentage increase are we becoming more attached to Krishna? So anyway, she crosses the Yamuna river and she arrives on the bank of Vrindavan, and she's very eager, very determined to find his Gopal and see him. So she's going around with this basket, and instead of saying mangoes, bananas, she sings Govinda Damor Dharamadaveti, Govinda Damor Dharamadaveti, Govinda Damor Dharamadaveti, Govinda Damor Dharamadaveti. So like that, she's going around thinking that, she's calling out, "Do you want mangoes?" to do her business, but she's actually just all the time just saying. So 3 days go like this, and no, Krishna doesn't come. So on the third day she vows. It's a month for vowing. So she vows, she says, "If I don't see Krishna today, then I will give up my life. What is the point of this life?" So she's so absorbed in Krishna, obviously. So on the third day, Krishna fulfills the desires of his pure devotees. So on the third day, Krishna jumps out of Mother Yashoda's lap, runs over and says, "Oh, what's going on?" So in his hand, he picks up some, I think it's grains, he picks up some grains. But, Gopal's little hand, as you can see here, the deity is like a tiny little hand, So he picked up a lot, but most of it fell out when he was running to get some fruits. So he tried to bargain with her, being, cowherd man, Vaishya. So he said, look, I've got this many grains. I'll take that many fruits. Give me everything you got. So she's looking, smiling at Gopal. And she sees that Gopal only has like one grain left in his little hand. So she says, look, you don't have enough grains for the fruits, but if you sit on my lap and say I'm your mother, then I'll give you all my fruits. So Gopal gets nervous, like, oh my God, what about Mother Yashoda? And what if someone sees me sitting on another lady's lap? So anyway, he somehow or other, just to please the devotee, he sits on her lap and he says, dear mother. So like that, she gives all the fruits, and Krishna takes, and all he can take is, if you could see here, all he could hold in his two little hands is like, I think it's described 2 mangoes and a banana, but she was offering all the fruits, but all he could take. So he's running away, and he gives it to Mother Yashoda, and she distributes it to the gopis, and they're all tasting it. And then she is walking back to the bank of the river Yamuna, and she engaged whatever opulence she had, just a few bananas and mangoes, in the service of the Lord to please him. And when she gets to the riverbank, she finds that the basket she's carrying is very, very heavy. She's like, what's going on? If I just, emptied it all out. So she puts it down. She sees it's full of priceless jewels and rubies and gems. It's really heavy. And she looks at it. But because she's in pure goodness, because no longer can she engage these jewels in Krishna service, she's thinking, what's the value of it? So she just throws all the jewels in the river Yamuna. So next time you go bathing in the Yamuna, have a little look. And she thinks, what's the point of it? Anyway, and she gives up her life, and she leaves her body and takes on a elder gopi spiritual body form to serve Krishna eternally in Vrindavan, Golok Vrindavan. So here we can see how she engaged whatever little opulence she had, and she got so much in return. But unless there's a desire to engage it in the Lord's service, it's of no value. For the pure devotee, the value of any opulence is in how it can be served to Krishna. It's pleasure. Similarly, Sudama Brahmin, he, I won't go into the story, but at the end, he's received the, broken rice by Sudama, and Sudama goes home and gets a palace, and his wife's living opulently. And Grihastha means nice house, as Jay Krishna Prabhu was saying yesterday. So, she was very satisfied, and he was thinking, okay, well, I didn't really need this, but anyway, my wife wanted it, and so everything is taken care of. So it's said by one of our acharyas, Giriraj Swami comments, how Krishna's had one handful of this broken rice, and all its opulence was awarded to the Sudama. And he was about to take another handful of rice. But at that time, Rukmini, who was with him at the time, we see the picture, she was in the bedroom at the time, she took the bag of rice away. And there's a couple of reasons. One acharya explains it as Rukmini was concerned that Krishna might get ill from, eating dirty rice. But the other reason, which is very nice, is that she was concerned that if all this opulence was given to Sudama just with one handful of rice, if he eats the next handful, how much opulence will he attain? So again, he engaged so little opulence. We all have more opulence than that. Even the brahmacharis, than some broken rice, right? In your lockers, there's something. Or at least Mother Kalangana sweets are there. He engaged the opulence, and he got so much back, but he wasn't attached to the opulence. So, in conclusion, as time is running out, it said in the Bhagavatam, in the 10th canto, Yashyaham anugriha nami harishye tad dhanam shanai. It is by the mercy, this is a purport by Srila Prabhupada, it is by the mercy of the Lord that one gets all material opulence. But if such material opulence causes one to become puffed up and forget the process of self-realization, the Lord certainly takes all the opulence away. So here, Shobhari Muni, he was doing his perfection of yoga under the water, doing yogic, mystic siddhis. Doing yoga, perfecting yoga practice underwater. And then he got all of this material opulence from chanting perfectly. In the previous verse it explains. And then he became a Griha Medi. So he didn't engage the opulence that came for Krishna's pleasure. He used it as himself. So grihasta means one who has a house and engages it in the service of the Lord, so it becomes a temple. And grihemedi is where it's for their own self gratification, a sex life. And then at the end, he then renounces everything, takes vanaprastha, as we'll read, and he goes to the forest, and then he becomes again a yogi and tries to perfect himself. So again, material opulence, we have to be careful how we see it. If we have external opulence that is based on our consciousness, once I heard that Prabhupada said the only difference between material and spiritual is our consciousness, because everything comes from Krishna anyway, so it's all spiritual. So if we have lots of money, if we have a nice Mercedes Benz, if we have whatever the opulences may be of the six, whatever we have, if we see externally, it's not going to be conducive for our spiritual progress. We have to start internalizing. I once had a conversation with Sutapa Prabhu in Leicester, and I was just discussing with him. I rarely get an opportunity to have his association. And he made a point that one of our limitations in spiritual life, he finds amongst many devotees, I think he was mainly speaking to me, but anyway, is that we don't internalize enough. We don't reflect and internalize. And so this is a key principle that we should try to do. Yes, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says on Ekadashis, but especially in the month of Kartik, we should reflect. We shouldn't just 64 rounds, chant them, and never think of Krishna. We should slow it down and just take some time to reflect and internalize. Many devotees nowadays, a lot of my friends are writing diaries or letters to their spiritual master. So one Kartik, I remember a few years ago, I wrote a letter to my spiritual master every day. I didn't send it, but I wrote it. And it was the most magical time of my spiritual life, because for once I was being in the present and I was just reflecting. And so I've got first-hand experience, and I'm sure all of you devotees do, that if we just internalize, something external can become internal, and we can understand, because the super soul will speak to us of how we can engage it in Krishna's service. So yes, I'll finish off with a quote that a friend gave me recently, which I think is very, very apt to this purport. Again, this is where King Mandata is feeling like, I'm the emperor of the world, and Shobhari Muni, just a guy who was living underwater, has better opulence than me. So the quote goes as, and we can meditate on this today and try and practice gratitude from this. Be grateful to Lord Damodar for what he has given to us, for what reciprocation he has given us. We pray to God to change our situation, not realizing that he has put us in this situation so that we can change. We pray to God to change our situation, not realizing that he has put us in this very situation so that we can change. So similarly here, Mandata and Shobhari Muni are being put into certain positions, but because they're not internalizing enough, they're not understanding. Later on, Shobhari Muni will, and he'll internalize and then see the need to come away from this position that he's in. So thank you so much for your kind attention. Forgive me for any offenses or discrepancies in my presentation. Is there any questions briefly? Or corrections or comments?